your high horse.
Yeah. Having the conversation about third culture.
Alright, hello!
Welcome.
This is an exciting episode because it's our last episode for the first season.
That was really loud.
I know. I'm Jess. I'm a creative director by day and a third culture blob by night.
Wow. So blobby. And I'm Thea, a tech manager by day and a cultural mishap by night.
Yeah, and today we're gonna talk about
This culture effect.
Individuality!
And today we've got a special guest. Ho 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 ho! Andromeda!
Oh my god, that was so hot.
You are so hot.
You are hot.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. Well, how's it going?
Good. Good to see you guys.
Yeah. Well, fancy seeing you here in this place, Jess's
In this
apartment.
very cozy corner.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So today we're talking about individuality, and I would love if you could give the listeners / watchers a bit of an intro.
Introduction.
Yes.
Okay. Hello. So my name's Andromeda. It's of course not my birth name, but whatever.
It's the name.
It's the name. By day, I'm a creative director as well, so we're kind of
Yes.
same
I
industry.
feel so left out.
I know, tech is like, what?
Yeah.
And by night, well, also by day, I'm a drag queen and also a magazine editor as well, and also just anything that involves creativity.
So you're also a slasher.
Lots of slashes, honestly. I've taken a
Not
few
this
out because
kind.
it was like
This kind.
makeup, stylist. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
you know what?
that's too much. That's too much.
Let's
Just
narrow it down. A
yeah,
little
keep
bit.
it precise.
But yeah, and I was born in Mexico, grew up in Canada, and came to Japan in 2015 for the first time. So yeah, kind of like both of you guys, been around the world.
So would you say your cultural identity is also quite a soup of
Soup.
different things?
Yeah, definitely alphabet soup, I think. But it's interesting because third culture was never something I identified because I only came to Japan when I was 21. But before that, I think the word didn't exist that much, but
Yeah.
it was more like I grew up as an immigrant in Canada, right? So it's like, I even don't really know right now the difference too well.
There's so many layers to because you were an immigrant in Canada, but then
Yeah.
you also moved to Japan.
Exactly, yeah.
So does that, are you a double immigrant? Or double third culture immigrant?
I mean, there you get in the argument of like expat versus immigrant in Japan. It's
Oh,
like,
right.
it's like,
Yeah.
I'm an expat.
Which is expatriate.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
really?
such a.
Yes, that's such a weird word, right?
It's
I don't
weird.
know. It sounds pretentious to
Yeah.
me.
Expatriate.
Patriot.
That just means you were patriotic before, but you're no longer patriotic? Is that what it means?
So
Moving
you've
on.
abandoned your country. Anyway. But yeah, I think only coming to Japan, I kind of understood the third culture thing because like when I was in Canada, I very much understood myself as being Mexican living in Canada. Like it's not my original country.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, I don't know about you going to the States, but like I was going back every summer vacation, every winter vacation to Mexico. So it was very much like, you're here to go to school, but like we're going back home all the time. So it was like, but then at some point, you're like, wait, I don't know Mexican society because I am as a visitor every time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you play more like a visitor role.
Exactly,
Than,
yeah.
You're
yeah.
half and half. Oh, sorry. That had balls in my mouth.
Yeah. That's what she said. Yeah, that's kind of also how I feel whenever I go back to Taiwan. Because it's like you are free from the social obligation as well.
You kind of see it with like rose-colored
Yeah,
glasses.
exactly. You're like a tourist who happens to speak the language really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then only coming to Japan, I kind of was faced for the first time with like not knowing how to answer where you're from.
Right.
Because in Canada, if someone asks me that, it means they're asking for my roots because everyone, like, it's like, obviously I'm Canadian because I live here. Like in Canada, when I would get asked that question, I was like, oh, they're asking about my like ethnicity, right? So it was very easy to answer like, oh, I'm Mexican because I also immigrated there. But in Japan, I was like, which one do I say? And also, are they asking about my ethnicity or like my like cultural background? Because I know if I would say Canadian, they'd be like, but you don't look Canadian.
Yeah.
Like I thought Canadians are like white and tall kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I kind of had to like figure out what my identity was for the first time around then. Yeah.
So then, how do you answer that question now?
I honestly just say whatever I'm feeling.
Okay. Or like whatever's convenient.
Yeah, whatever's convenient at the time, or like, if I care, I'll give a long enough answer. And
If they warrant that sort of effort.
And if I
Yeah.
want to fuck with them, I'll be like, oh, I was born and raised in Japan. And they're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I don't take that question as seriously as I did anymore.
Yeah.
No.
I think like a while back we also said that. Just like have some fun in it.
Yeah, because honestly,
Make a story.
it's hard to really know where you're from, and it's like, at what point do you like keep breaking that down? Like, it's like, I'm from Mexico, but then like, of course, Mexico is a country of like immigrants from Europe and all parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, should I trace that back and be like, oh, actually, I'm French, or like whatever it's like.
Yeah, just like go get a DNA
Yeah.
test and then just like bring, you know, the heritage
yeah.
DNA test and just bring up the
did
chart.
that. I did that because growing up, I wanted so badly to be rooted somewhere. Because it's like you're kind of floating in this like, oh, I don't know who I am. And I would be jealous of people in Canada who are like, I'm born and raised in this like small town, and I know like 50 generations back, like we're all here. And I was
That
like,
we
wow.
took over that land from the...
Yeah, from the native people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I was jealous, and I was like, I wanted to be rooted something. So I kind of felt like really wanting to be like, okay, who am I?
Yeah.
And then I got the results, and I was like, this tells me nothing. Like, it's numbers, but it doesn't answer my question of like, who am I?
Yeah.
It's interesting also how our bloodline history has so much to do with your own identity. But these days that's been decoupled so much now because... And I think you can see that from a lot of mentality towards people who don't really care too much about what their parents did or their grandparents did. They're like, this is me. This is my individuality.
But do you think that's possible? Or does it eventually come back, like, somehow? Can you escape from your heritage?
Probably.
Oh.
I mean, like, I'm running away. I think how you grow up, your parents have a huge effect on, you know,
Who you become.
who you become. I think there's so many studies about that where before age 7, I think you're pretty much set in terms of like who you're gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they
But
have a lot of
yeah.
effect on you.
I do find it quite. It's beautiful the word, because I've heard this saying, right, when I was in the States, and some of my friends, they were sharing their story that their family shared. Like, not fun fact, but when you're in the States and then you talk to Black people, a lot of them they'll say they don't swim, or they cannot swim. They don't want to learn how to swim. And then, but I was like curious, and I keep asking the questions. I'm like, oh, why is that? Is there a reason, or you just happen? It's a coincidence. Like, happen to be everyone I asked, they just happen not to swim. And then they said that basically what their family or their parents told them is water has memory. The moment you go into the water, you feel all the fears that your ancestors were feeling. You feel all the trauma and the past.
Yeah.
And then somehow, even though that's like sad to hear, the same time it's beautiful to me.
I thought you were gonna go a completely different route with that.
I know, I saw that face.
Where, because you know how they had to bring all the slaves on
Yeah.
ships, and so
But that's
maybe they told them not to swim, or they purposely made them not be able to swim.
But it's the exact same reason,
like a
right? Why they feel the
generational-
trauma, they feel the pain and stuff, because slavery era.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the slaves jumped, right? And chose to kill themselves, which is why, like, water
Has
carry
memory,
their ancestors.
Yeah. And then when they talked about that, there's like a sorrow in their tone, and then it triggered a lot of things in them. But the way they talked about it, I'm like, it's almost you can't escape from your heritage.
But you kind of build a new identity the same way, because I know a lot of African American people in Canada and in America don't actually know like where in Africa they were brought over from. Right? Then you create like a new culture and a new identity, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you can't escape necessarily from where it comes from, but it's like you're free to create whatever identity you want.
That's just a part of you, but this is now.
Yeah, and also like another side of it is you start to build this sense of. I know some of my friends they just start to learn their heritage, or they just found out what the tribe their ancestors were part of, and then even though they weren't aware or not as interested as kid and then before, but now they want to learn, so they start to blend in that side of their identity into what they do, like what they create, and it start to form it, to your point, like their own culture, or make it part of who they are as individuals.
Do you identify as half? Like, is that something actively at you, like, or do you identify as
Because I'm technically not by blood half,
Okay.
but also Japanese part of me is not the ones that are in Japan. So my grandmother, who is in Canada, is Japanese by blood, pure Japanese, so to say. And then my grandfather on my mom's side is pure German, so to say. So they're both from those countries, but my dad's side is the one that is in Japan, but they're, part of the Korean slaves that came over. So they're by blood Korean. So I don't know if I can... I've never said I'm actually half.
Yeah.
I either say I'm
Mixed.
I'm mixed. I just say I'm mixed. Like Canadian and Japanese and other stuff. And there's a bit of shame as well in Japan to say you're part Korean because of the whole
Zainichi history.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So slavery, pushing immigration everywhere.
Colonization. But I do think to a certain extent third culture is a product of colonization, to a certain extent, of like moving people so far from like the original, whatever that means, like, right? But like mass migration movements that came with slavery, and like even like colonization that destabilized countries, that causes people to move.
Yeah.
And then those people who move, have to create an identity, and then their children, it's kind of flow, right? It's like you no longer have ties to a certain country, but you don't feel a certain place. So it's kind of like you can't disconnect the two from each other.
Yeah.
For sure. Everything, again, is intertwined with one another. That being said, that also created a lot of unique third culture babies, including us.
Yeah.
And
That are educating, I don't want to say educating because it sounds like I'm on my high horse being like, we should all be
Having the
culture."
conversation.
get down your high horse.
Yeah. Having the conversation about third culture. I don't know what that accent is. But, yeah. So, in terms of third culture and individuality, what do you think individuality is as a definition?
I don't know. I always think about this a lot because I always wonder if individuality actually does exist to a certain extent. Like we talked about this on the podcast that we did for Iwakan about individuality as well. And it's like it's like at the end of the day there's groups no matter how individual you feel, right? Like I have my like super artsy like goth friends, but they also have like 10 other super artsy goth friends that dress the same as them. Right? So it's like I'm not part of the main group perhaps, but I'm at the end of the day like part of this other subgroup.
Like this community.
Yeah. and-
You're also not the only one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but you might be a bit different, right, from the subgroup in some way, because you are. No one has the same experience, right? No two people. And I'm always wondering, like, how important is it to think about your individuality? But then, if none of us are unique, then we don't have to worry about being unique. We can worry about doing whatever we feel like doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
'Cause-
think that's a freedom in
Yeah.
that as well.
Because a lot of people want to be like, I want to be an individual, and so therefore I'm going to actively do something different. But it's like, then you're not doing what you want to do. You're doing what goes against.
Yeah, you're doing that just because
Yeah.
you think this is going to make you,
Different.
Yeah.
I think I definitely went through that phase of I'm gonna do everything that everyone's not doing just so that I feel I'm different, and I ended up being super unhappy and very lost because it's also not what I want to do. But also I feel like to your point of not having free will, to an extent, I can see the angle of the end of the day we're all sheeples.
Wake up, sheeple!
What's a sheeple? Oh, sheep people. Okay.
People.
I was like, sheeples.
Sheeple. And
Bah.
I personally find that word really cute.
I like it.
Yeah, but
Make a new brand, like, I'm a sheeple.
sheeple. Yeah, but I think every information we receive is we get fed by different information that's curated to a certain extent. So if to that argument, then it's probably true we don't have free will in terms of what we receive, and the decision we make it's based on what we receive.
Yeah.
And then that source is controlled by certain things, right?
Yeah.
So even the belief in aliens is like are you sure? Or
Well,
you're
there's
just
different-
like trusting a photo NASA show you and
Yeah.
you don't even know where that photo is from. You know, like all those kind of discussions been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
I think being third culture, one of the good points is that because I think what happens with society often is that if you don't have a point of view outside of that society, you think that is the truth, right? But then being third culture, you kind of
Challenges
realize,
the truth.
well, you get taken out of one, and then you realize how man-made each one you are in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're able to criticize and analyze, like, is this real? Is this not real?
Exactly, because to your point, exactly where I'm going to is like the reason why I get to have that analogy is because I pull myself out of one society to realize
Yeah.
we're all sheeple.
Yeah.
To one sheeple to another.
Exactly, yeah. Just have this understanding and then we're all gonna die anyway. So
the bad.
don't worry.
Definitely.
Let's all bad dead together.
No reaction.
Say no. Bye.
All right, everyone.
You too.
I said no.
And you're like,
but,
we pause.
All right.
That's right.
Like Blue's Clues.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
By the way, Blue's Clues, for all of y'all who haven't seen Blue's, do you know Blue's Clues?
yes.
You know.
yeah, of course.
It's such a heartwarming thing because the guy who is the Blue's Clues guy, the show has stopped many years over, and he like came on recently and was like, "Guys, I just want to say I'm so proud of you," and blah blah, and it's such a wholesome
Heartwarming.
moment. Yeah.
You're really into those like happy broadcast content.
I am. I don't like sad news. I want to be happy
Yeah,
because there's too much sadness in the world.
that is true.
Tying to that, oftentimes the question about individuality brings more pain than happiness. And then so you say like sheeples, I think a lot of time it's actually just easier to like go with the whatever society says, because if everything is predetermined, then you don't have any power over what's happening. So
Yeah.
it's like, why am I going to fight so hard to change a system that's been decided 1,000 years ago?
Yeah, so I think we covered a lot of like how does being a third culture kid affect your sense of individuality. In what ways do you think different cultural expectations changed your individuality? So being in different cultures, has it
Yeah.
like amplified, suppressed, or changed greatly?
I think,
What's your individual journey?
yeah, I think essentially we're kind of mirrors of our environments to a certain extent. But for me, growing up in Canada, but coming from a Mexican family, like we were very traditional Mexican with like very traditional Mexican standards, I would say. I guess a lot of people say Asian countries are alike, and I think a lot of Asian countries and South American countries have very similar values. Like in a certain way, like very Confucian of like the family comes first and like all of this stuff, and like don't stir trouble and everything. So I think every third cultural immigrant is like you're kind of battling like your family's values versus the society that you're in, right?
Yeah.
You're in the society that's telling you like be yourself, do what you want, like have a dream and everything, and then you're at home where it's like no, you need to study, you need to dress a certain way, you need to be conservative. So I think the environment's kind of caused me to always be in conflict, and like I kind of learned that I had to like always fight for like who I wanted to be.
Do you think you had a pretty strong sense of individuality from a young age?
Yeah, I think somehow, I don't know if it's individuality, but disagreeing with like the standards.
Resilient.
Well, resilience, and I think also logic. I think society is a very illogical being.
Yes.
And so like one of my earliest memories would be like arguing with my mom, because my mom almost never wore skirts. She would always wear pants. But I was always told like, no, men wear pants and women wear skirts. And I was like, that makes no sense because you're wearing pants. Why can't I, like if you're allowed to code switch, why can't I wear skirts?
Yeah.
And so it's like all of these things that didn't make sense to me were always like upsetting to me.
You know, a little bit outside topic. I feel like that's why a lot of adults trying to trick kids, because kids sometimes they will ask the most brutal, honest question.
Because they don't get society yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In a certain way. And society's full of bullshit.
Yeah.
And it'd always be told like, well, that's just because that's how it is. And I'm like, I don't accept that. Like,
Yeah, that's not a answer.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I bet way back, there was a reason that was the case. Like culture and tradition is very emotional, very like illogical. because it doesn't make sense now. So maybe it came from a root of something, and then it's just you get
Patriarchy?
used to it.
You have the
Patriarchy.
remnants of.
You have the remnants of it, yeah. And then now you can't explain it, and it seems illogical.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the world, people, we're constantly changing. But if you're always just, you change based on system that's stayed unchanged, things start to not making sense anymore.
Yeah, and this is why, like, I know gentrification and everything is really bad, but if you have a community or a place or a society that remains the way it is forever, that's actually not a good thing. It just means you're stuck and you're not learning, you're not evolving.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's a lot of problems with change and evolution and things like that, but there does need to be some sort of change.
I mean, there comes the argument
hopefully.
of culture is never a fixed thing. We have this idea of preserving culture, but it's like trying to preserve water. Like, it will run through your fingers and change in a certain way.
Yeah.